Hi everybody, welcome back to another session of vocal diagnostics. I'd like to follow up on what we talked about last time with our Messa di Voce discussion. Now, we covered a few key points, but one of the other things I wanted to talk about was what happens to your air on the tail end of that exercise. So if you remember, the Messa di Voce exercise we discussed was going from a quiet dynamic, a pianissimo or a mezzo piano, to a forte, a mezzo forte, and then back to that original dynamic. So we talked about the importance of having core in the tone. And if you don't have core in the tone, you're not going to find very much success. It won't sound good and it will not feel good. So how do we ensure that that last part of the exercise sounds good? Well, we have to increase the breath pressure. For me, the part that takes the most breath energy or the most breath support is the final part of that exercise. The very last part that I come back to after singing the loud part. So let's try one of these out, okay? So we've got that last part where my hand goes out in our international breath gesture here. That last part for me takes the most engagement. Yes, I'm at the end of my tank, but if I don't really engage with those abdominal muscles, I get this. I get... It disappears. It just goes away. The chords are pulling, again, tight, right? So for the high notes and the quiet notes, the chords elongate. They get thin and they stretch far apart, like a rubber band pulling. For the low notes and the loud notes, if you remember, those are also controlled by one muscle group and they get thicker and fatter and closer together. Well, when you come back to that quiet note at the end of an exercise, your breath is near depletion and near being depleted, and you're trying to sing that quiet note. It feels a whole lot like singing a high note. So you're singing quietly and you're trying to sing on an almost empty tank. You really got to engage those abdominal muscles to make sure that you don't tense here and that you maintain core in the sound, okay? So just remember those two muscle groups, the cricothyroids control the high and the quiet. The thyroarytenoids control the low and the loud. What does that mean for you? It means support your tone and sing with core. Just know that your muscles will be trying to find that exchange, and at any given point, one of those muscle groups will be dominant. Your job is to stay out of the way. So as we talked about with the jaw, make sure that it stays loose. And as we talked about with the air today, make sure that you re-engage for the end of that exercise. Don't leave yourself hanging. Your body is pretty resilient. If you don't supply the necessary air, you may get a version that sounds like this. You may get... So I've somehow made a decrescendo happen, but as you can hear, it's not a beautiful tone, and there's a ton of flexing happening here. Well, that happens all throughout the range if you're not careful. So you've got to make sure that you're getting the right result in the right way. In other words, make sure that it's always a breath-dominant sound. So if your abs feel like they're tightening in, almost like you're trying to do a crunch as you're singing that Messa di Voce, that is correct. Check in up here. Make sure your jaw is released again and is hanging out and is not flexing or tightening. The other thing to remember, as I mentioned in the first installment of this exercise, this will change with different vowels. For example, in ah, if I go, ah, I may not want my jaw as open for the ah. It may feel slightly different in that middle part of the voice as it does down in the low part of the voice. Be adaptable, be flexible. Listen to what your body is telling you, but above all, insist on pure vowels and core in the tone. And often your body will help you find that path of least resistance that gets you the best sound for the least amount of effort. Thanks for watching again today. Try this out in the practice room and in the studio. Tell me what you're discovering. Let me know what questions or struggles you're having as you play around with this exercise, with the Messa di Voce, and with experimenting with different dynamic levels. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much.